Hi Ghosties, I'm Macy.
And I'm Natalie.
We're back with yet another long-awaited topic. Today, we're telling listener stories, but they are all from people who work in nursing homes, hospitals, medical setting, just in the medical field in general. And not even necessarily work there, just this is the setting.
I'm so excited. This is something I personally have been waiting for.
Yes,
for a while.
We've often talked about the haunting feelings we all get when we enter a place that is often filled with such hardship, sickness, even death in most cases. And it seems that most healthcare workers and even visitors to these places have a ghostly story or two of their own to go along with these spooky feelings. So I've combed through our pile of listener write-ins and picked out those from people like this, and we hope you enjoy.
I'm excited. It is so perfect with the timing because I'm rewatching House, as I've stated before, so yeah. I'm deep in the medical stuff right now.
I started rewatching Grey's Anatomy, so as am I.
Well, look at us.
I know, we're practically doctors.
Well, I mean, hey.
Anyway, our tea today is Republic of Tea Pink Chai.
It's one of my favorites.
What did I call it? Chawai?
Pink Chawai. Yeah, and it's a repeat, and it will continue to be a repeat until I'm out of it because I love it. Good. So let's go. And before we get started, someone commented. It was one comment, but I'm going to let you know. Someone wanted an update on the bird beef, as they called it. If you listen a couple episodes ago, I was talking about the birds on my porch. The two that were trying to invade the space, they were not blue jays. I know a lot of people commented they might be blue jays. They were not blue jays. They were just, I don't know what they are. I'm not a bird person. They have gone.
Good.
And the one in the nest is still there, ready to attack me anytime I walk out my door.
All right.
But she has not yet.
Good.
But she is safe.
I'm glad to hear that. I was worried once people started talking about it and like, no, they'll steal their nests and steal their eggs and all this crazy stuff. And I was like, no.
Oh no, those two are gone. They've probably found their own nest and Mama Bird is in there on her own.
That's a relief.
But all right, sorry if you didn't care, but I know at least one person does.
I cared, so that's all that matters.
Two people. Let's get into it.
Our first story comes from Amber. Hello, Ghosties. I recently found your YouTube channel and have been enjoying all the stories. I have a few to contribute from my time as a CNA at a nursing home. I'd had other nursing home jobs before, but this was my first time working the night shift. One night early on, I was doing rounds with my coworkers. She would walk me through the hall checking on people and explain anything important before she turned the hall over to me. At the very end of the hallway was the activity room. It was perfectly normal during the day, but at night with the lights off, it had a creepy reputation. People often claimed to see a shadow man standing in the pitch black doorway. This particular night, my coworker told me she once turned the lights off by herself and turned to see the shadow figure standing right next to her. She ran to the nurse's desk, but the nurse on duty just said, "That happens a lot," and went on with her day. Now my coworker would only turn off the lights on the hall when someone was with her while doing the rounds. That hallway always had a heavy feeling to me, so thankfully I was usually assigned to a different one. But every now and then I had to work that hall when we were shorthanded or when my coworker for the night was on break. One such night, I was at the nurse's desk right in the intersection of the three hallways when one of the residents emerged out of the darkness from the creepy hall. She was a frail old lady moving slowly with her walker and her eyes were wide. She kept repeating, "Turn it off, turn it off." She came right up to me and asked me to turn off the music that was scaring her. There was no music. Most people even had their TVs turned off by this time of night. She insisted she could hear scary music.
I don't like when you read like people's words of them saying it. It's always so scary when you say it.
I'm sorry.
I don't know why.
She took my hand and led me back down the hallway to her room. It was one of the most surreal experiences of my life, having this person lead me into the dark, repeating, "Can't you hear the music? Turn it off." Once in her room, I still couldn't hear anything. Her roommate had lots of porcelain dolls on the shelves just to further set the scene. This lady actually closed her door, shutting us in complete darkness to help me hear this mysterious, scary music better. Then she started humming whatever it was she was hearing.
I'm not against geriatric violence.
Oh my God!
I'm just kidding. Don't hit people, or especially old people.
No!
But I'm feeling...
To shut the door and be like, "Don't you hear it?" It's like...
And start humming?
Yeah. That's scary.
A swift little punch and I'm running.
Well, she was obviously scared, but I didn't know what to do and I just wanted out of that room. I reassured her as best I could that it was probably a neighbor's TV that was making the noise. I opened the door for a little light. Then we held hands and prayed together. Then I got out of there. No neighbors had their TVs on and I never heard anything. I started asking my coworkers for their scary stories from work. All of them had at least one. even those who didn't believe in ghosts. The scariest one I ever heard came from the nurse in charge of my section. This was her story.
Okay, and before you go on, I am against hitting old people. That sounded so horrible, but it was just how I felt in the moment. So obviously I don't condone violence, but y'all know how I am. I'm not angry. I'm scared, and I don't know what else to do but besides like flail my limbs. So,
and all around will be in danger.
Yes. Don't hit people.
Do not. Violence is never the answer.
Don't hit the elderly.
Okay, so on to the other nurse's story. A few years ago, this nurse went to a certain room to check on a resident who had been ill. The resident had the bed near the window in the back of the room, so it was dark with the lights off. But the nurse clearly saw her, saw that she was awake, and the resident even smiled at the nurse. The lady who shared the room was in the bathroom at the time. The nurse thought something felt a little odd about the room, but there was nothing obviously wrong, so she moved on with her night. Later on, she was told that the resident lady had died earlier in the day. The body had been removed before the nurse's shift even began that night. She said the most horrible feeling washed over her as she realized it was impossible for her to have seen the resident in her bed.
See, that one does not scare me as much as the first one. That one's
at least
just kind of like,
smile.
Oh, I forgot she smiled at her.
She did. But maybe it was like a sweet, like, thanks for checking on me one last time.
Yeah.
Kind of vibe. Even though it doesn't matter, because imagine it happening to you. You're like, no, I saw her in her bed. She was there.
That's why.
Actually, she wasn't.
I could never work in any type of medical field. 1, I'm squeamish, and 2, I'd be scared.
I'd be frightened, especially in an overnight facility like that. Any kind of like nursing home, rehab facility, like night shift at a hospital where people are just there overnight and it's dark and it's spooky.
I was scared. I slept in the hospital the night our mom had surgery. I was low-key kind of scared.
At least you were with her though. You weren't alone in your bed or alone at the nurse's station.
Yeah, but she turns all the lights off when she sleeps. Did you know that?
I thought most people did.
All of them. No.
So do I.
Not me.
Usually.
I keep all the lights on, TV blasting.
Okay. I mean, sometimes I'll have the lights on, like we talked about the other day. Sometimes I'll leave the lamp on, but most nights the lights are off. Occasionally I'll turn a nightlight on if I'm feeling a little spooked.
Well, pitch black in the hospital did
Scary.
enough for me. Scary.
I never really understood people's fear of hospitals, but I certainly understand the fear of nursing homes. In these places, people live out their last days, some peacefully, some not. Some are sweet and kind, others are bitter and resentful. They bring with them mementos of a long life and so many forgotten stories. Almost all of them die there. Some families never arrive to claim the body of their deceased relatives. That breaks my heart.
I wish you wouldn't have even said that. I didn't want to be sad today.
I wonder how many of the people had attachments, if you believe in such a thing, and whether those attachments move on after the death of their person. Maybe they're happy to hang around a place with so much history, emotion, and despair. Maybe it's easy to find a new person to attach to when the people are mostly feeble, medicated, and trapped. Amber.
Good Lord.
Frightening thought.
It is, but I would like to think that most nursing home hauntings are just the residents being like, hey, what's up?
But it is scary to think, I mean, when you are sick, you're more vulnerable. And if you're sick before you get to the nursing home, are you bringing that attachment with you?
I would like to vote no, but it is possible.
Yes.
I'm voting no for my peace of mind.
Okay. It just makes me think of Emily's story. We read it just recently in the 100th episode. We reread
With the woman in her house?
Yeah. So do people who end up needing to go to full-time care bring their little friends with them, you know?
I don't know, but that just made my stomach drop.
I'm sorry to bring
I hate
that back.
that story. That's a scary one.
Really scary. So thank you, Amber, for sending that in. That was frightening. Our next story comes from Abigail. Hey, Ghosties. I found your podcast and have been binge watching it in my free time. It's no surprise that you've blown up in the last few months. Your podcast is fascinating. I'm hooked, to say the least.
It is a surprise.
It truly is. I messaged you on Instagram, but I kept it brief and figured I'd send an email when I had some free time. So here it is. Feel free to share if you'd like. So I work night shift at a long-term care facility in Minnesota and have had my fair share of ghostly experiences. I'll tell you about the one that sticks out the most, and might email you about the others another time. This nursing home has been around a while, and as many know, most people coming here are older and end up passing away. On one particular night that I was working, my coworkers and I heard a resident talking. We went to see if they needed something, and when we got there, they were looking up in a corner telling someone to leave. My coworker asked them who they were talking to, and the resident replied with, "That black shadow up there,"
Oh, no.
and pointed to a corner. There was nothing. My stomach dropped.
Mine too.
After assuring the resident that they were safe, we left the room and went to tell the nurse what had happened. The nurse looked startled. She told us that a few residents have reported seeing a black shadow in their rooms, and days to weeks after that resident would pass away. Mind you, most of these residents have dementia or Alzheimer's, so it's not like they're conversing or coming up with this story. Anyways, she stated that one night a nurse was working and claimed that she had seen the same shadowy figure. She was so shocked that she told her coworkers about it. They had heard of the stories but never really believed them to be true. Everyone chalked the ghost sightings up to the residents' old age and their deaths to declining health. Most of the coworkers didn't believe her. That morning, after her shift, she was driving home and hit a deer. She ended up passing away. When I heard that story, I got so scared. I stared at the ground while going about my tasks for the rest of my shift. I've always got weird vibes from certain areas of that nursing home, and now whenever I go in, my mind is in overdrive. If this spirit is real, there are too many coincidences for me to think otherwise. I wonder if they are showing themselves knowing your time is coming, or if they are showing themselves to you in order to take you. Either way, I don't want any part of it. I'm not sure if you take recommendations for podcast ideas, but I would love to hear one regarding hospitals, nursing homes, and aliens. More so aliens. They fascinate me. Happy Halloween.
Okay, well, they said exactly what I was thinking.
Me too.
Is it, I know you're about to go, or
An
I'm
angel
here,
of death.
so you are gonna go. I knew it the second you said she saw it. I knew. I didn't want to think that's where the story was going, but
At first I thought, oh, well, so if another person saw it who,
No.
isn't a resident, then maybe,
I knew.
what does it mean?
That's really scary. I couldn't stay working there.
That one gives me chills. Our next story comes from Alisha. I live in the UK and have worked night shifts at an elderly care home for the past 2 to 3 years. Spooky stuff is kind of a common thing for us, but nothing has ever scared me like this one experience. It was a few months after I started, and I was typically based on the ground floor. The first floor was the scariest by far, just from the vibes and other people's experiences. This one time, it was around 3 a.m., and I got the unfortunate luck to go do welfare checks on the first floor, alone. As soon as I stepped out of the lift, an elderly woman we were caring for at the time was walking past me, fully dressed. Please bear in mind, the lady wasn't fully mobile and would have struggled changing her clothes herself, so that in itself was strange. I stopped her and asked her what she was doing. She kept repeating that she needs to go over and over again. I told her it was 3 a.m. and we should get some rest and talk about it in the morning. As I was guiding her back to her room, I could hear talking from another room. It was a woman talking and a deep man's voice talking back to her. We didn't have any men on that floor. It was so clear, hence why I thought somebody else might have been working on the floor. After I got the lady into bed and she told me Jay's waiting for me, I went to check on the other lady, the one who I could hear talking. As much as I was scared, standard safety procedures are more important. I opened the door quietly to find her fast asleep in bed. I genuinely have never felt so scared in my life. I couldn't get off that floor quick enough. When I was back downstairs and told my other colleagues what had happened, my senior then told me that Jay was the lady's husband that passed away years ago. After thinking about it all, the lady headed in the direction to where I could hear the talking and saying her husband was there to take her. And then actually hearing a man's voice. I've never felt so frightened before. Like I said, working in a care home, especially at night, creepy stuff always happens, but I've never had something as scary as this. If you managed to read this, thank you. Love the pod. Keep it up.
Yes, I would be scared, horrified, petrified, would never want to go back.
But as an outsider,
It's her husband. It's like
she was going to him. Unless it wasn't her husband, she heard a man's voice and thought, Jay must be here to take me, and was walking in that direction, thinking it was her husband, but really it was something else entirely.
I like option A.
So do I. I just had to throw it out there.
But no, coming from that perspective, like I would never be able to go on that floor alone or just ever again.
Being down there all by yourself, just surrounded by people who need your help, you know? That's a lot of stress already. And then to add the paranormal on top of that is just...
Dude, don't let me be in a situation where I have to care for others when I'm scared. My God.
I know what would happen. Our next story comes from Maddy. Hi, Ghosties. My name is Maddy, and I've never shared this story with anyone but my friends and family. I love your pod and figured this would be a good story for y'all. I was working as an ER tech in a local hospital on the night shift when this story happened. The hospital I was working in was older and was actually built into the hillside and later added onto. The ER I was working in at the time was either ground floor if you went into the ER entrance, or was below ground if you went down there from the main hospital entrance. Our radiology department was directly above the ER, and you had to take an elevator to access it between floors. I had dropped a patient off in radiology for a CT scan and was headed back up to take them down to ER when one of the creepiest experiences of my life happened. The radiology floor at night was lit by every third overhead light, so there was enough light to see and work, but it was still fairly dark. When you first get off the elevator, you walk down a small hallway, then turn left at an old nurse's station to get to the radiology hall. I was walking up to turn at the old nurse's station. I looked up and saw an older guy with a receding hairline, thick glasses, and a black and red checkered shirt looking back at me. The nurse station had glass on one side, and he was standing in front of the glass with his right hand raised, resting on the glass. I looked at the guy and knew he wasn't supposed to be in that area at the time because it was around midnight. When he realized that I was looking directly at him, he put his hand down and moved to the left and out of my sight behind the wall. The nurse's station had a little waiting room on the other side of the glass, where he was. So stupidly, I figured I'd follow the guy and let him know he wasn't supposed to be there. I was like 17. so not really sure why I thought this was a good idea. When I rounded the corner looking for him, he was nowhere in sight. The waiting room dead-ended with only a bathroom, and he wasn't in there either. He would have had to walk past me or walk away from the nurse's station through some very loud automated doors. To this day, I still have no idea what I saw, but the hallway always gave me the willies after that.
Well, yes.
That's frightening.
It makes me think of, have you seen the movie Fractured? I think is what it's called.
No.
Okay. It's a Netflix movie. I could be saying the wrong name. It's one where a man's daughter passes away or gets hurt, and then she gets hurt, and then they take her to the hospital, and it becomes this whole mind game thing.
I have heard of that. I have not watched it.
You need to watch it. It's kind of insane. It's kind of insane. But yeah, I was just thinking about him because at one point he's at the nurse's station all angry, and for some reason I got freaked out that the man was angry. Why do you have his hand on the glass?
Just leaning there and just standing there, and he looked and he's like, oh,
fade away. I don't like that he walked away. I'd rather him just vanish.
Yeah. Unless, like we said, it's a moment of
a time slip.
Yeah. Intersecting dimensions or timelines when he was like, who is that? And he stepped back
to be is there a woman there? Ooh.
Either way, spooky.
The time slip stuff and the Matrix things have really altered my sense of reality. Yeah.
Feel that. This was also the same hallway that I had another patient ask me why the women were staring at us. Again, this was on night shift, and this other patient did not have dementia or anything that would have altered their mind. I asked the patient what they were talking about, and they pointed down the darkened hallway in the opposite direction of the nurse's station, where it was almost entirely dark at the very end. When he elaborated more, he told me that there were 3 women with black eyes just staring at us at the end of the hall. I mentally thought, oh, hell no, and ran the patient and I into one of the exam rooms to be out of the hall. I have since become a nurse at another hospital and have experienced other weird things, but none as weird as the things that happened in that darkened radiology hallway. I hope to hear this story on your podcast, and I have other spooky stories of working in the ER there that I still can't explain if you guys are interested. Stay spooky, Maddy.
We're interested. Why would you make the hospital dark in any way? In the hallway?
I don't know. I guess if it's not being used, they're only going to one room, it makes sense not to use all that energy.
Yeah, but that's just you're asking for something scary to happen every third light. That's a setup.
It's spooky. Why were there 3 women and why were they
with
all
black
staring?
Eyes?
Yeah. What did they want?
I don't know.
Who were they there for?
Great question.
They angels of death or something? Just
this patient was not
No, they're on break. They're just chilling on break down in the dark
just
hallway.
Hanging out.
Oh, I've got someone up on the 3rd floor soon. I don't know. I'm picturing a The Office, but paranormal.
Oh, I don't like that. And I don't like that you said it.
Okay, I'm sorry.
I'm scared. They're just hanging out, waiting to go.
Waiting for the time.
No.
Okay.
I refuse.
You made me feel stupid.
No, I'm scared. I don't like the thought of them being I guess I gotta go. I gotta take my lunch early. I have someone dying at 12. It's
yeah.
What are you talking about?
That is kind of freaky. I'm sorry I said it.
Also, that's just your 9 to 5.
Would you be able to? Yeah, they just work different shifts. Can you switch me? I've got something.
I hate that a lot.
I'm so sorry. Would you push them into another room, or would you take off
push them down the hallway and run? Be I don't know. Find out. God. Human sacrifice or patient sacrifice. Down the hallway.
Okay, you're hitting grannies. You're sacrificing patients. I'm glad you don't work there.
Every man for themselves at this point. I'm just kidding. That's why I don't work in healthcare.
Yes. Nobody wants Natalie as their nurse.
No, you don't.
Okay, our next story comes from Iris. Hello, Ghosties. It's me again, Iris. I've sent a story in your email about a weird book and about sleep paralysis. Now I want to share another story that happened to me when I was a college student and an intern in a hospital back in 2017 or 18. I am from the Philippines, so I apologize in advance if I have grammatical errors. The first experience, I was alone inside of this room where we usually have to make drug preparations, and while I was doing my thing, I felt a warm breeze on my neck. It almost felt like a breath. The hair on the back of my neck stood up, and I felt the urge to get out. So I did. I called my supervisor and told her that I don't want to be left alone and I was scared. Just a reminder, I was still 17 or 18 at the time, and our supervisor was very understanding and told one of our janitors to stay outside the door. I apologized to our janitor and told him I'll be quick with my task. He told me that it's okay and sat at the front of the door where I could see him.
That's sweet.
I'm so glad that the supervisor was like, okay, I understand.
I know. And this person was only 17. I'm 25 and I would do that. Hey, do you want to sit in here with me? 100%.
The second
Or I would just be scared to death, shaking by myself because I'm too afraid to admit that I'm scared to outsiders.
To actually talk to anybody about it?
Yes. I can't imagine going to any of my casual coworkers and being I'm scared. I couldn't do it. I could not.
If anybody came to me like that, if any of my coworkers came to me, I'd be like, okay, I'll come with you.
Same, but not everybody is like that.
The second experience. It was a graveyard shift, and I am with a schoolmate named Kai, again fake name. It was around 12 a.m., our break time, and we were eating inside this pantry kitchen area. Inside that kitchen area, we have a sink, dish cabinets, and a microwave. No stove or anything because we're inside the hospital and we're really not allowed to cook for hygienic purposes because we're dealing with different kinds of medicine. Kai and I were facing each other while eating. She's also facing towards the dish cabinet, so basically, I have my back facing the sink and dish cabinets. Since it was a graveyard shift, we were talking about scary stories and rumors about the history of the hospital. While we were talking, I heard a tap sound and saw Kai's eyes looking at the top cabinet. I asked her, should we run? As a joke, and she just laughed, and then we heard another tap. Her cheeks were flushed while smiling and not saying anything. I looked at her again and asked, girl, I'm ready to run, just tell me. Again, as a joke to lighten the mood. She just laughed and we finished our food. When we came back to our station, I asked her, what happened back there? Did you see something? She told me that one of the cabinet doors opened by itself when we heard the second tap and didn't want to tell me at that time to not scare me or cause a commotion or anything like that.
Brave.
She's just standing there. She's like, we're fine.
Brave.
Tear going down.
Bravery that I will never possess. I would just have to tell myself like, man, the hospital has rats. Dang it.
That open cabinet.
Oh man. Yeah. Rats or ghosts? Which one would you rather have in your home?
Oh. Ghosts.
Evil ghosts? Not demons, but ghosts there to cause like harm and wreak havoc, or rats?
Ghosts.
Yeah.
Mostly
I think
because
so too.
I don't want to have to put traps or do anything to get rid of them. I don't want to kill them.
I agree.
The
Comment
ghost-
down below.
Ghosts
Rats
or
or
rats?
ghosts? Everybody's gonna say rats because there are some people in our
That are
comments
still
that like.
commenting your rat army.
Well, yes, but then there's also people that I know some of our listeners have pet rats.
Interesting. Okay,
Yeah.
if it's like a nice little pet rat, but not if it's like a feral
Like a New York sewer rat.
Yeah,
that
like
one.
Splinter.
Yes. Move on.
Okay, the third and last experience. We had a 4-hour break at that time and didn't know where to stay, so one of us decided that we should just spend the day in one of our friends' houses, which is very close to our school. Honestly, we were just there chilling and talking, and I admit that we're a bit loud, but we heard a vibrating sound coming from the room just beside the couch where we were sitting. I stopped, and one of my guy friends, let's just call him Ian, heard it too. We looked at each other, and some of our friends also stopped talking. At first we thought it's a phone vibrating and shrugged it off. I was talking with another friend beside me and then we heard it again. You know how some of the phones produce sound while vibrating? That's what it sounded like. I leaned a bit closer to the bedroom door and Ian was also trying to figure out what the sound was. The room became completely silent and we heard the vibrating sound more clearly. This time it sounded like a if you know what I mean. I looked at Ian and Kai. Yes, she's with us at this time too. Then someone said it sounded like someone's humming, but no tone at all. I kind of freaked out because I'm literally just beside the door of that room. One of us turned on the lights from the kitchen to make us more comfortable, and the friend who was staying in that house told us to just ignore it and don't acknowledge it again. So yeah, that's some of my personal experiences. Sorry if it's too long. I hope you have a successful year this 2025 and the next. Love, Iris.
Thank you. That's the second time we've mentioned paranormal humming today.
It is.
That's enough. Number 1 was enough, but I'm good.
I like that the person who's staying there was just like, no, don't acknowledge it. Don't draw attention to it. Don't give it power. I have to sleep here tonight.
The correct response.
Thank you. So thank you, Iris, for sending that in. Those were good. Our next email comes from Emcat. Hello, lovely ghosties. I hope you are as well as you can be. Aster's story of their illness at the sanitarium reminded me of an experience I had as a child. I'll start by saying I am also a scientific person. Think sensitive skeptic. I am the child of a lawyer and an engineer. Went to DNA camp and am a passionate environmentalist, but also attended Catholic school, and apparently this sort of thing runs in on my maternal side. When I was about 10, my sister, brother, and I had a nanny who I will call Polly. While I realize now that Polly was quite unwell in the mind, and our family's relationship with Polly swiftly imploded after the weekend I described in the story, she and I were incredibly close while she was with us. We lived in an old home in northern Indiana, and she lived in the bedroom above our garage. I have stories about that house, but those can wait. One weekend, she asked if she could take me with her to visit her mother a few towns over. My parents agreed, and I was obviously super excited. I really admired Polly and saw her as an older sister. We drove to visit her mother's workplace in a town called Plymouth, I think, about an hour away. She brought me down a ramp, I think, through doors that went into the main room, and it was a friendly, middle-of-the-road hospital check-in. The staff was comprised mostly of middle-aged women in patterned scrubs, and they all seemed sweet, but the doors at the far end made me feel like I was getting horizontal vertigo. There were bright fluorescent lights in the room, the sort that hang from the ceiling in trays, but it felt like they were swinging and casting darkness and strange shadows, making it difficult for me to see. I felt odd, but I didn't want to ruin my opportunity. She introduced me to her mom and her friends, and then she tried to show me around. I started to feel really, really uncomfortable. Not because of anyone, mind you. I have social anxiety and am on the spectrum. I have issues compromising and abiding my social expectations. If I find something unacceptable, I will often check someone or leave. Nobody was doing anything wrong. It just felt like the space was rejecting me. Finally, Polly tried to bring me to the double doors that had faced the doors we had entered. I couldn't. I refused. My palms started sweating and my throat started closing, and I don't even know what was back there. Could have been intake or triage or a cafeteria. Beats me. I told Polly I needed to GTFO now. She got a really cheeky kick, telling me in the car afterward that it had supposedly been the most haunted hospital in Indiana, and the area she tried to show me had been a plague ward / morgue. I found out years later that when I was meeting her brother and sleeping over, not receiving texts or calls from my parents, they were requesting that my parents take me home. Polly refused. Things contributed to being weird and ended shortly after. I hope this was reasonably spooky and at least understandable. Thanks so much for everything you ladies do. I cannot wait to receive my merch order. All my love and all the best, Emcat.
Hello?
Why was she so intent on scaring Emcat?
I don't know.
They were only like, what, 10?
I don't know. I personally don't think scaring kids is very funny. Past
No.
like a little like, boo, ah, that's it.
Yeah, like a jump out, like,
Yeah.
ooh, yeah.
Because
But-
your kids like to do that. They like to jump out like behind the door or something.
But not like, I know this place has a like sordid, horrible backstory and I'm going to drag them down the hall into this haunted hospital.
I don't think
that's a
that's
little
funny.
too far.
And I don't know if it's because I was such a scared kid growing up, but
You have empathy for that.
I don't like scaring children.
I'm glad you stood your ground and was like, I'm not going in there. No.
Oh yeah, me too. Because I would have just been like, okay.
Especially for someone that I admired and like thought of as my big sister. And yeah,
I would
It
have
would've
wanted to
been
be
hard.
tough and cool. Yeah.
I'm glad you didn't find out what was in there. The fact that as soon as they walked in the door, they saw those doors and were like, something's wrong. Something's wrong there.
And I believe it. I'm interested to know what hospital.
Me too. Our next story comes from Dom. Hi there. I wrote to you guys back in October, but I was just listening to your newest listener story episode and you told a story about a nursing home and it reminded me. I have so many more stories than I thought. I used to work at a nursing home during COVID, so I would have an essential job for the time being and be able to actually get out of the house. And man, was that place creepy. So here's 2 stories, both shorter, but still creepy. The home I worked at had, I believe, 3 or 4 floors, including 2 lower levels. One was a super creepy basement I hated going down in, and that's where more high-risk individuals resided. Some people couldn't be near the other residents as they were violent. The next level up was also still a lower level, but that's where the laundry room was, as well as about 20 other rooms.
I never considered anyone in a nursing home being violent.
Yeah, especially they get confused and they don't know what's going on, and yeah.
I don't know why I never thought of that. That's so sad and really horrifying.
Working in a nursing home is really hard.
Oh yeah, I know, but I never considered anyone would be violent.
Any medical field, really.
Well, yes.
My main job was to give the residents their baths, change adult diapers, not fun, and answer call bells. They put that, by the way, not me. There was one man who had to leave the home to go to the hospital and unfortunately passed away while he was there. So you can imagine how my stomach dropped when I checked my pager for a call bell alarm, and it was in his room. The room was vacant since the previous resident left for the hospital, and I knew that. But unfortunately, the only way to turn the call bell off was to manually reset it in the resident's room. So I literally had to go down into the spooky basement to answer a call bell for a ghost. Not to mention the basement was a long hallway with flickering lights, so it felt straight out of a horror movie. This next one happened during a COVID outbreak at the nursing home. Because it was an outbreak, all the dining and communal areas were closed and we had to deliver each meal to the residents while essentially in a hazmat suit. Anyways, I get to this one lady's room, bring her meal, and she points to an empty chair across from her and said, "Aren't you going to bring my sister her meal too?" Her sister had passed away years ago. I just said, yeah, give me 1 minute. Then I left.
Oh, that's kind of sad.
It is sad and scary. What if it's not her sister?
Well, I would like to believe it is. Thank you.
Anyways, now that I'm thinking of all these stories, I do believe I have a few more if you guys ever want to hear. You're more than welcome to share these on the podcast if you'd like. Cheers, Dom.
You guys never have to ask. Send
Always,
it all.
always send them. Always send them.
And you can send us stuff you don't want us to share. We love getting stories where they're like, don't share this, but this happened. And it's like,
literally right before we started recording, I showed Natalie a video that someone sent us that was really creepy, but they were like, I don't think we could share this. So whatever, but I like to see it.
I feel so mischievous
I know,
announcing that. It's like, I would hate.
We don't
I
mean
would
it that
hate
way.
us.
Yeah, same. Sorry if you do.
Be like, show me the video.
Only if the people are comfortable. Our next story comes from Rosie. Hi, Macy and Natalie. My name is Rosie. I was recently introduced to your podcast by my sister, and I thought I'd send you a story of my own. Well, technically, it was my coworker's story. I work at a retirement and assisted living facility in Washington State, and that is where the story happened. I am a cook in this facility, and everyone in the kitchen has had little things happen to them. From incomprehensible voices behind you, seeing things from the corner of your eyes, to water in the hand washing stations turning on their own. But no one had an experience quite like my friend who had a conversation with a resident no one had any recollection of.
Oh no.
A few years ago, at the height of the COVID pandemic, our facility had to go on lockdown, and when that happens, we deliver the residents their meals to their rooms. During that time, my friend said she spoke to an elderly lady who said her name was Diane. About a month later, we had to go on lockdown again, and this is when my friend brought up Diane. She told me she was very excited because she was going to see Diane again, and she would be able to tell her if she still needed to take her cat, she would be willing to take it. This is when I became confused. I had been working there for a couple of years and had never heard of a resident named Diane. She thought I was messing with her because she scares fairly easily and told me to stop. She described Diane as a tiny, frail lady with white hair and graying skin. She had a kind of breathing tube in her neck, carried an oxygen tank with her, and had been looking for someone to take her very big, fluffy cat. She was also adamant about the lady having a portrait of her cat in her TV stand. I told her I have never heard of a resident by that description. She made me walk through the entire facility to look for Diane's room, but we never found it. We even called our boss, who has worked in the facility for over 20 years, and even she had never heard of any resident by that description or name. To this day, we still believe that she spoke to one of the many ghosts of the facility who is still trying to find her beloved pet a home. I hope you like my story. My sister and I love listening to your podcast, Rosie.
That's
sad, but cute.
It's so cute. I don't know if it makes me like sad or happy that she, in life and in death, was so concerned about her pet.
I know she's still walking around making sure that her pet has a safe place to go.
Dude, I can't with the pets. I can't do the sad pet stories, but that is that's beautiful that she has that much love for her cat. I hope the cat ended up being okay.
Over 20 years prior, before Boss started working there, you know?
Maybe.
But yeah, that's
But the kitty was loved.
And sweet story, yeah. Our next story comes from Kaylan. Hi girls, I recently started binging the podcast, and while watching this week's episode, I heard you guys had an interest in nursing home stories, and I have a specific experience of mine that I just have to share. In 2023, I became a housekeeper at a nursing home for sisters, nuns, and while training for my position, I was told multiple paranormal stories by my coworkers. At the time, I didn't really believe in the paranormal. I've had a few experiences here and there, but nothing too crazy. About 6 months into working there, we lost a sister after her long battle with dementia and cancer. This was the first funeral that I had experienced being held at the nursing home. We have a chapel for mass and funerals. The morning of the funeral was like any other for me, and part of my daily routine was vacuuming and cleaning the chapel. As soon as I walked in, I saw her open casket and all the beautiful flowers surrounding it. Even in the pitch black, it was so pretty. I was in there around 6:30 a.m. No lights were on, only the hallway lights were shining in through the windows and cracks in the doors that were shut behind me. As soon as I turned on the main chapel light, a huge wave of sadness and almost fear came over me. So I propped open the door and began getting the vacuum ready. And while doing so, I was sort of talking to myself to calm myself down. I started talking to the sister out loud and telling her how missed she will be and how pretty her flowers are. As I turned the vacuum on, I apologized for the noise and said I would be as quick as I could. I tried my best to avoid getting too close to her casket, so I turned my back towards it, and as soon as I did, I heard a loud cough, almost like someone clearing their throat to make their presence known. Instinctively, I turned the vacuum off and said, "Sorry, sister, I'll be out of your way in just a minute." Since I was used to sisters sneaking up on me while I was cleaning, and it was normal for them to come to the chapel so early in the morning to pray and see the casket and such, my back was still turned towards her casket and the chapel doors, and as soon as I turned around, I saw her, the sister that was dead in the casket, standing in the doorway. It was her with her dark blue walker and her favorite outfit, a yellow shirt with her light green sweatpants and tan sandals. As soon as I looked up, she simply turned her walker around and walked away. I literally was so shocked. I just watched her walk away, and I immediately packed up the vacuum and got out of there. I like to think that was her telling me to stop causing such a ruckus that early in the morning and interrupting her beauty sleep. Anyways, I hope you guys enjoyed my story, and hopefully it was a positive refresher from all the scary stories that you guys read.
You had me in the first half. I was scared, but then once they said, she was just, saying like, "Excuse you,
Hello.
Be quiet, please."
Trying to rest.
So, okay. All right, sister. That's kind of sweet.
That is sweet. I never thought about nursing homes for nuns.
Me neither.
It makes sense because, when you're a nun, that's your family. Like, the church is your family, so you don't really have anybody to take care of you in your old age. So it really makes sense, but I never thought about it.
Me neither.
And so this was interesting to read and to learn.
Yeah, for sure. I never thought about that either. One thing, though, the cough reminded me of when people pass, like they still make sounds.
Oh yeah, like not long after they pass, yeah. Because
air coming out.
Gases are still releasing.
I have seen stories where people they just get into the field where they are around the dead, and they'll hear like a And they didn't know beforehand?
You just faint.
How do you deal with that? What do you do?
If you don't know beforehand, especially, that would be one of the most terrifying moments of my life.
Like, that is so scary.
Yeah, I don't like that. Our last story comes from Bumble, and this one made me really emotional.
Oh God. Can't do emotions today, bro.
It's a happy but very sad story.
Okay.
Hi, lovelies. My nickname is Bumble, and I recently subscribed to your channel, and I've been listening every free moment I have. I saw that you guys talk about dreams, so I thought I'd send you guys my story. It's a little long, but worth it, I think. It gives the creeps, but also that nice, warm, fuzzy feeling. For almost 10 years, I worked in nursing at nursing homes caring for mostly the elderly. Because of my job, you get to know them, build friendships, and give them care as they slowly decline, even through the process of dementia and Alzheimer's.
People that work in these fields, angels. Because
Agreed.
they form bonds and attachments and give these people friendship and love, and then they just have to accept that they go.
Yeah.
Oh, I just almost started crying. Continue. Oh my
Very
God.
hard.
Y'all are angels.
I was many people's last conversation, last touch, and I got to hold their hand as they passed out of this world. This also meant that another part of my job is preparing the bodies immediately after death for the family, getting them bathed, dressed, etc., before going to the funeral home. It wasn't my favorite thing to do, as I've had to experience some traumatic deaths. I always took it as an opportunity to give my dear friends the respect they deserve by caring for their body properly and the way they would have wanted. I know, I'm already starting to cry. While the person in this story has long passed, for privacy, we'll call him Ed. I was there when Ed first moved in. He was tall, intelligent, witty, very independent, and always made me laugh. He would talk to anyone and was always interested in learning new things about people, places, and things. He also drank a ton of coffee, so we bonded over that. He was previously a doctor, so he was always very well put together. Button-downs tucked in, pocket protectors, small notebook for notes, freshly shaved face, and polished dress shoes with a matching belt. Over time, he slowly forgot things more and more. A few times, he tried to leave because he said he had to go pick up his wife, who was long deceased, from the train station. His moods changed, becoming irritable because things were confusing him. He fell a few times, but through almost all of it, he still remembered me. He knew my name. He asked for me when he couldn't figure things out. Finally, he was bedbound, unable to speak, barely ate, and needed around-the-clock care and someone to sit with him so he wouldn't get up and hurt himself. But I still spoke to him like I always did, and he still recognized my face even if he didn't know my name. We had a feeling it was very, very close to the end. Hospice care was called in and was attempting to prepare his family for his last weeks and days. I did my best to care for him to the best of my ability with the least amount of pain possible, but it was hard to even turn him in bed without a cry of pain. One day I went into his room at the same time I always did, saying hello and did not expect to reply. But I rounded the corner and his bed was empty. I stopped in my tracks, hoping he wasn't lying on the ground on the other side of his bed, until the bathroom door slid open and I saw a sight that made me fall apart in both absolute joy and terrible sadness. Ed was fully dressed, shaved, walking with his walker to the living room. He said, "Oh, you're here. I didn't hear you come in. I feel like I haven't seen you in a while, dear. You look lovely. Could you grab me some coffee and a newspaper?" I was too stunned to speak. He walked to his big comfy recliner and sat down and asked his Alexa to tell him what the weather was and what was on the news today. I turned and his morning sitter had arrived and we met eyes. We both knew what was happening. There's a wonderful phenomenon that happens sometimes when people are close to death. We call it rallying. It's when the body has a last sudden burst of energy. People that are on their deathbed can be fully conscious and functioning, asking for food, remembering those they've forgotten. But that's all it is. It's the last time. I knew that this was the last time I would ever get to see my friend Ed for real. I spent as much time with him that day as possible. I took my lunch break in his room and we ate lunch together. We talked and laughed, but by the end of the day, he could barely speak and couldn't keep his eyes open. Our last day was over. 2 days later, in the morning, I got a call from his sitter and he was gone. I called another nurse and we took our time putting him in his best clothes, bathed and shaved with a photo of his wife in his pocket. It was hard to say goodbye, even though I'd done it a million times. The next night I had a dream. I saw Ed in his comfy recliner. He was dead and in the clothes I put him in, just how he looked when I saw him last. I heard myself ask him why he was there, but he didn't tell me. No part of him was moving, but I heard his voice. He spoke so softly, but still like his energetic self. "It's about that time, Bumble. I've got to pick up my wife at the station. She's been waiting for me and I don't have any time left. Thank you for everything. I know your name. I'll always know your name. I just wanted you to know that I'm going now and that we'll have our coffee together again. Bring a newspaper. I'll save you a cup."
Oh my God. Macy.
Okay.
Oh my God.
I watched him walk away from me down a brick street, hearing a train whistle in the background. I tried to ask him why he came to me specifically before he got too far, but a thick white fog blocked him from view, and then I woke up. I had chills all over and cried. I had gotten so used to seeing death that I thought I couldn't cry about it anymore. I had been visited in dreams by deceased patients, but they're usually the traumatic deaths I experienced. Never once had they come to thank me and say goodbye. I will never forget him and the wonderful friendship we had, and I am forever thankful that he came to me. I know this was a bit on the long side, but I hope you enjoyed reading, and I hope you can include it in an episode one day. Take care, Bumble. Bumble, you got us. You got us. I've already read this story, and I've already cried, and I couldn't even control it.
I'm just so happy that he had someone that cared so much.
I know, and that's what I hope for everyone's family member, you know?
I don't want to do this anymore.
Sorry, when you can't take care of your family anymore and you need the help, you just hope that you get someone like that. Someone like most of our, like the listeners that wrote in today that, you know, care. And that was beautiful. And he appreciated you and came to tell you goodbye because he knew how much you loved him too. I saved that one for last because it was just like one of the most beautiful stories I've ever read.
I was already having an emotional day.
I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry. Woo. Oh, yeah. That was beautiful. But we appreciate all of you who took the time to write in today. And if you have ever worked at a place like this, or you have some spooky stories from your time in the medical field in any way, shape, or form, even if you were a patient, send them in. I wouldn't mind doing a part 2 if we've got some good ones. You can send in your story to our email at ghosteaspod@gmail.com. It's also written in the description down below. Like this video if you liked it, share it with your friends if you feel compelled to do so, and subscribe for more. What emoji can we tell them to leave today?
A crying emoji.
Okay, leave your tears in the comments for us, please. And if you're listening on audio, please give us 5 stars. That'll help us in the algorithm too. That'd be really nice.
R.I.P. Ed.
That was rough.
Goodbye.
Bye.